And speaking before the committee, you can fill out a card. We're not going to do the normal 1-minute deal. We're going to have you come up and speak. If you go too long, we have a trap door. So we're going to do it as a conversation so we can get your ideas and thoughts about what's going on. So you give us a couple of minutes. Ms. Perry, I know, will not be here because she's had another engagement, but I don't know about Mr. Zine, but we'll get started right around 6 o'clock. Good evening. We're going to start the special meeting of the Education and Neighborhoods Committee. Bernard Parks, the chair. Ms. Perry, I said earlier, will not be here. If Mr. Zine comes, we will continue with the meeting. What we'd like to do is have you fill out a card if you wish to speak and be on the record. We'd ask also that if you come up to we have a place for 4 people, you come up to the table, and you can basically come in the order that you choose. We're not going to call your name. So the first 4 people that wish to come and talk to the committee, please come up at this time. And seeing no one move.
Good evening, council members, committee members. My name is Mark Mosseri. I'm with the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council.
Speak right into the microphone, else they can't hear you.
I'm with the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council. Test,
Okay.
test, 1, 2. Better?
All right.
Okay. What I'm about to say to you folks will most likely anger everybody in this room to some extent. And in a way, that's part of what my goal is, because I think it's really important that we lay some things on the table. In 1992, Ross Perot made a statement, and it was about NAFTA. And what he said is that giant sucking sound you hear is the sound of jobs going to Mexico and Canada if this NAFTA thing goes through. What we learned is, here in Southern California, absolutely true. Lots of entertainment industry jobs went to Canada and went to Mexico. So here we have an example of a broken clock that was right twice a day. And why do I bring this up? Because the sucking sound we're hearing now is the sound of the NC system going down the drain. I think we all know this. We all know that it's inherently broken. And we all know that we're having a real hard time trying to figure out how to fix it. And there's reasons for that. And I'm going to get to those. But I want to kind of set up a foundational argument. And I'm going to probably touch on some things that you've heard before because I haven't had the opportunity to come to the earlier meetings. First thing, council members, is I am sure that everything you've heard about neighborhood councils is true, right? Are NCs doing great things? Yeah, absolutely, they are. Are NCs operating in a professional manner, in a courteous manner, and in a way that they address their stakeholders in a meaningful way? Yeah, absolutely, that's true. But are also any NCs running like petty oligarchies? Sure. Are some of them running like benevolent dictatorships? Absolutely. Are some of them stifling minority opinions? I've seen it. So you have 2 sides of the equation that you have to kind of come to terms with. And there's a reason for that. And basically, my feeling on the NC system, having been in it for 4 years and having really studied it carefully, is it's one of these classic examples that it's a good idea on paper, poorly executed. Now, why do I say that? Well, 1, we have the problems that we have. And 2, we've seen similar systems in other metropolitan areas and cities actually work. Now, how do we drill down on what the issues are with ours and what can we do to actually make it better? First thing is, any good management training will tell you there's the 3 C's. Communication, clearly defined roles, and continuity. Those are the basis of how to run a good organization. This is where neighborhood councils suffer. When you step into your job, council member, you immediately inherit infrastructure. You get an office. You you get a staff, you get an IT department, you get a phone system that works, you get all these things which enable you to come into your job and do your job to your best of ability. The NC system does not have this. It has not been set up for them, and you have many neighborhood councils who, either through serendipity or sheer tenacity, have created these systems and have created continuity to where new people coming into the system can actually hit the ground running. But they are in the minority. The majority of neighborhood councils, as I'm sure you've heard from the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, don't have this continuity. They walk into roles that they're not quite sure what they're supposed to be doing. Right? They're not quite sure exactly how they should do it, and they're not quite sure what the legal latitude is of their responsibility. Thus, we have problems. We have clashes between stakeholders and neighborhood councils. And that's one of the things that could probably easily fix, but it's going to take some debate. Moving on. You also get mechanism. You get to go and say to the city attorney and the council member, like, previous Council President Garcetti did when I watched this, he would say, Mr. City Attorney, Ms. City Attorney, can you enlighten us on this subject? Are we in legal territory here? Neighborhood councils don't have that. They don't have a lawyer sitting at their right side ready to advise them. They have to kind of feel their way through it, and a lot of times they make mistakes. And there's opposition like there's in politics, and the oppositions are the first people to point out, you've made a mistake. And some folks will, go to the extent of filing a grievance. Why after 8 years we don't have a grievance process is beyond me, but it is what it is. So now, the final thing that I really think is at the essence of what the problem with the neighborhood council system is we don't have clearly defined roles. Some neighborhood councils think that their job is to basically assist in the delivery of city services, and that's in the charter. Other neighborhood councils think, and have been very vociferous about, our job is to rattle City Hall's cage. Now, wherever you come down on what the role is, the fact is that it's ethereal. No one really knows what a neighborhood council's job is. And if you really want to get to fixing the neighborhood council system and making it a really viable part of the city infrastructure, you got to tackle that. You got to say, look, this is what a neighborhood council is supposed to do, and this is kind of how you're tasked to do it. Do you have right as citizens and as stakeholders to go before city council and make your voice heard? Clearly you do. The Brown Act ensures that. But I think a lot of neighborhood councils don't know exactly what their role and responsibility is, and this leads to certain frictions and certain, what I'll call, ineffectiveness. So those are some things that I've seen happen. And if we could make this clearer, I think we'd have a better system. The next thing I want to kind of address is that we don't have reliable mechanism and we don't have continuity. And I've already addressed that, but the question is, okay, that you have a firm grasp on the obvious, Mr. Morseri, what do you do to fix it? Well, first off, you have to define who is the continuity role. I think in our case, the continuity role belongs to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I don't think they have a clearly defined role. I think we spend an inordinate amount of time and money doing things like it was done in the 19th century. We have all this mechanism at our disposal and we don't use it. We do everything by paper. This leads to mistakes. This leads to bureaucracy. This leads to arguments and all sorts of friction. This entire system should have been put on the internet from the word go. From the time you register to be a candidate to vote, you're locked into a system, you go down, they call up your file, you prove your credentials, you're a candidate. If you are elected, the city clerk taps into that system, if it is the city clerk, and validates you've been elected. All of that information is automatically slid to the neighborhood council system, and you don't have to retype it in. My business cards are generated the day after I'm elected. Not that I fill out a form, my secretary has to fill it down, 5 months later I get a business card, and that's just a simple example. You have a website that's up, and you have each of 95 neighborhood councils all doing their own website. Why is it that we haven't taken, a page from the NFL or Major League Baseball and figured there should be one system, and every council gets to brand it in their own way, but it all feeds in one system? Why? Because it's consistent. Why? Because it's easy to remedy when people have problems. Because every other council knows how it works. We have people coming into our council, we have to go through copious hours of retraining to train them on our internet system because they're not web programmers. And you don't know in an election if you're going to get a web programmer or an accountant or an IT specialist. It's just luck of the draw. And what has to happen in order for this system to work is that mechanism has to be put in place, and you're going to get to the next big challenge of after you clearly define what a neighborhood council's role is how exactly do you do your jobs and what your structure is. Dunn has done a fairly good job at trying to get everyone on the same set of bylaws, but they are far behind it. And what happens is we try to create a system where everyone had their own set of individuality, which is a great idea on paper. Just like CRA is a great idea on paper, and redistricting is a great idea on paper. But the reality is, when you go to execute on it, it presents all sorts of problems. So here you have these things that keep piling up. What you have to do is say, guys, if you want this system to succeed, you all have to be on the same set of rules, at least a basic set. Because you're all operating like independent Italian city-states. You try to come together in coalitions here and there, but it never quite works out. And then when these coalitions present their information, it's really just one audience segment presenting their point of view. I can tell you right now that somewhere out there regarding the elections, there's this thing as well, the Neighborhood Council Task Force came to these conclusions, which they will present to you. Well, when you do a little deep digging on it, what you find out is the Neighborhood Council Task Force was never officially impaneled. It was a bunch of people that came together with a very specific point of view. You don't know what councils they represent. You don't know what election turnout they delivered in the last election, but yet they've said that the Neighborhood Task Force is making these recommendations. Except no one vetted the Neighborhood Task Force to say, well, what skill sets are you bringing to the table to make these recommendations? What I do know is that in 2006, a council was convened in this manner, a committee that still is on the record as being a standing committee of the City Council, which was the Neighborhood Council Review Commission, that put together a 50-page document that says, look, guys, here's the system as we know it. Here's what you need to do to fix it. And one of the things they said was, you got to take the elections out of the hands of the neighborhood councils. It has to go to an arbitrary third party. Now, you can read between the lines why they recommended that, but think about it. If you put the elections in the hands of the city neighborhood council with people who are on that neighborhood council who are incumbents, that's like having the RNC run the congressional elections. It's just not fair. You're going to get stacked decks. You're going to get maneuvering. I've seen it happen. Have I seen it happen to an egregious, oh my God, state? No, but have I seen maneuvering happen on the neighborhood council system? Absolutely. And when it comes time to deciding how you're going to do these elections, you really have to factor that in. Because on one hand, you have neighborhood councils that you deliver 60 voters, and the cost per vote is ridiculous. And if I was sitting on your side of the table looking at the efficacy of this, I'd say, come on, guys. But you also have other neighborhood councils that deliver 1,600 voters. And those two point of views are uniquely different. And I'm sure you heard from my colleagues that in Greater Griffith Park we had the highest election turnout of the last election. Our situation is completely different than a neighborhood council that turns out 60. So the one-size-fits-all approach is going to lead to a problem. And I'm going to ask a question that I don't know the answer to, and you don't have to answer it now. But at some point, the Finance Committee struck from the budget the money to not hold the neighborhood council elections. At any point in that procedure or process, did someone stand up and say, wait a second, you pull this money, you're going to create a problem of dramatic proportions that we're going to be wrangling with for months, if not years, to try to straighten out. Was that advice ever given? Because if it wasn't, you have to ask the question, why wasn't it given? And whose responsibility was to give it? Because you weren't properly advised, and here we sit now, scratching our head, figuring out how we're going to get out of this mess and try to make it work. So, ultimately, what I'm trying to tell you is this. If I was sitting in your shoes, or any council member's shoes, and I had 5 neighborhood councils that were crackerjack, that could basically watch my flank and take care of potholes and lights and issues and graffiti and all the little things that have to be done by your office by working through your staff, I think that would free up a lot of your staff to concentrate on the bigger issues that the city faces. And ultimately, a neighborhood council system could be a great thing, but we got to fix it. And unfortunately, in order to fix it, we all have to cop to the idea that you are fixing an airplane in mid-flight. And in order to fix it, what you need to do is ask certain questions. And I'm going to sum this up. Question number 1. Whoever has the continuity piece, do they have operational, on-the-ground understanding of how mechanics, mechanism, continuity, clearly defined roles work? Because if they don't, you don't have the right person in the job. Second, ask the question, how many people in the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment have actually worked on a neighborhood council, all right, have actually sat on a neighborhood council, and have an in-the-trenches understanding of the dynamic that goes on a neighborhood council? If the number is higher than 0, I'd be surprised. That is inherently a problem. Now, I'm not saying you go out and take care of the done staff and replace it with neighborhood counselors, but what you do is you hire advisors or consultants to say, hey, listen, we need to bounce this off people who've been in the trenches, who understand that the dynamic that works on neighborhood councils is just a little different from what we learned in management school. There's nothing that's going to take the place of experience. And I've never felt like there's been a real reach out to say, does this work? Will it work? You have a small group of people who have a lot of time to come and say, we think this works. But their point of view comes from one specific place. And unless you get a point of view that covers the panoply of the entire system, you're going to get skewed data. And what do we know about skewed data? It leads to false conclusions, which lead to problems. So I thank you for your time. I think it can be fixed. I think it's worth fixing. But it's going to take some work. And I think you have a lot of people who volunteer their time and energy. If you could just set a structure and give clear direction, you'd see great things come out of this system, and it would become the vision that was envisioned when it first set out. But it clearly has not delivered on that vision. And there are a lot of people who work very hard to like to see it happen, but they need guidance. And they need guidance by a continuity mechanism, either in the form of the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment or a different body. Thank you.
Let me just ask you a couple of quick questions. You mentioned the issue of roles. What we've heard in our first 3 meetings is that it appears that neighborhood councils are very sensitive about them establishing what they believe their role should be in their community. And so it appears a little inconsistent if you're asking us to create a role that many of them believe they should be creating themselves. They've talked about the one size doesn't fit all. They've talked about communities being different. I think even in your comments you mentioned on one hand on the bylaws we should have a kind of a universal basic bylaws, but then later on other comments you said one size doesn't fit all. So
in terms of the elections.
Yeah.
Because
I'm saying, but one of the things that we also have heard, if we had some form of a basic bylaws, it would clean up a lot of the election process because you'd have basic number of officers. You wouldn't have one neighborhood council with, what was it, 45 board members and no attendance at the meeting. And you wouldn't have bylaws where somebody took 2.5 years to write them over 20 pages. The U.S. Constitution isn't 20 pages. So these are the kind of things that, what is the happy medium if people are searching for their individual identity, they're looking for the issue of their collective wisdom as to their knowledge of their community versus being imposed upon?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's a very tough challenge. And I'll try to dance around this and come straight to the point.
Don't dance.
Okay. All right. Basically, there comes a point, to quote Colin Powell, sometimes being responsible means pissing people off. If it's the difference between losing the system and imposing that this is the structure you have to learn to live with, impose the structure that you have to learn to live with. It's not that we want to take away your rights. It's not that we want to make your life miserable. This is what we need to do to ensure the system continues and grows and thrives and becomes a working part of the city. Yeah, are people going to scream, how dare you do this to us? Of course they are. But at the end of the day, if it's the difference between you're not going to be or you're going to be this, I think they're going to choose you're going to be this. Because someone has to come down and say, this is the way that it's going to work. And I don't know legally how exactly you do that, but you cannot have 95 separate bodies functioning in 95 separate ways. It just doesn't work. And what we have here is uncharted territory in the terms of grassroots democracy. Right? I hear the term grassroots democracy all the time, and unfortunately, I think the term grassroots just means amateur. All right? It just means we're allowed to screw up a lot. And I think if you're going to get involved in this, you need to know what you're getting involved in, and you need to know that you're going to have to live up to a certain standard. You're going to have to hit the check marks, or you shouldn't be doing this. And are some neighborhood councils going to suffer and not be able to do it? Yeah. But are some going to thrive and figure it out and create the models to hopefully relaunch those councils? Yeah. But there's going to need to be some sort of quote-unquote drastic action that says, if we want this system to exist, we're going to have to do certain things which are going to be a little painful.
And then how do you reconcile that most neighborhood councils believe that they're functioning properly?
Well, ask someone if they're, the crazy person.
Other people will look at them and claim they're not.
Well, the first person who will tell you they're not crazy is someone who's insane, all right? The answer is everyone knows what they know from their point of view. If I was at the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, I would basically hire people that go in, evaluate meetings, and write a report back as consultants and says, here's what you're doing great, here's what you're not, here's where you're missing the marks. Completely objective, with no stakes in the game or no horses in the race, and says, look, we're just helping you to be better. But we don't do that. And unfortunately, it goes back to what I was saying about having an understanding of neighborhood councils. My neighborhood council was deemed by the Department of Neighborhood Howard to be high functioning. Okay? Well, it was a revolving door of the same people who've stayed on the same board seats, who switched different roles, who rarely knew the neighborhood council existed, didn't understand, did hardly any outreach, and it was beautiful. Why? Because they ran very quiet meetings. Well, I have to tell you, I think if you sat in on a Supreme Council meeting or a Politburo meeting, they probably run really smoothly also. If you've watched C-SPAN, you'll know that democracy is not pretty sometimes. But you need someone with an understanding that there is certain skill sets that indicate that a council is functioning or functioning as well as it possibly can and can use some improvement, to understand that a quiet room does not mean an adequate council. 2 years ago, I went before the city attorney and I said, listen, you guys vet bylaws to see if they're legal. Do you vet them to see if they're fair? And the answer was no. We just looked for the legality of it. Well, I had a set of bylaws which said 50% of my council was appointed. You know what that meant? That the same people kept getting appointed year after year. And worse, those people who were appointed participated in the appointmentship process. So, was there vote trading? Yeah. Did the same people get appointed? Yeah. Did anyone stakeholder who tried to get on the board be able to? Well, they showed up, but they didn't have a chance in hell of getting on the board. And somebody's got to come in and say, this system you got doesn't work. And I'm not quite sure how you do that, council member, but that's what's got to be done if you want to save the system. If you don't want to save the system, let's just bury it. Because there are a lot of people devoting their time and energies to try to make it work, and to find out that it's a fait accompli, that we're just going to, finish this thing off, and we should just kill it.
My final question is that you mentioned about infrastructure, and council offices have staff and city attorney advice, and what is your point there? Is that you're saying that's what each neighborhood council should have, or how does that?
What I'm saying is that it's extraordinarily difficult to have this hybrid of a volunteer advisory body that's officially charged and funded with taxpayer dollars behave in the same method of professionalism that the city council behaves in, or the next highest form of government structure, because we don't have the infrastructure. Right? So you're going to have situations in neighborhood councils where things go awry. Now, what you need to do is figure out how often these things go awry, and figure out where it is and put in mechanism that addresses that. Why the neighborhood council system doesn't have a paid consultant parliamentarian that can be called up and says, we're struggling with this thing, advise us how to do this, would straighten out so many things.
Are you saying that's from the individual neighborhood council's funds, or where?
Well, however we fund it, if the neighborhood councils have to give up some money to have this resource devoted to them, I think they would. I think if you did a poll of the neighborhood council system and saw how much money each neighborhood council put in their website and said, look, we're going to take half of that out of your budget, but we're going to build a fully functional website that handles all neighborhood councils, so the whole city knows to go to one place and basically look up your neighborhood council, and you'll be able to brand this thing any way you want. And they say, well, how are you going to do that? Well, look at the NBA's website, or look at the NFL's. The model is there. You don't have to invent the wheel. Just copy it. And you've probably saved half the money you're spending, each council is spending on this. If you're going to say, how much time have you invested in figuring out what the rule is and arguing over this, why is it, if we can't take this amount of money off the top and say, okay, it's a small percentage across 95, that we now have someone who is completely versed in parliamentary procedure, most likely someone who's a retired professor who makes themselves available for a very reasonable rate, to say, I'm here to answer your questions in the order they're received, to help you better manage your council. Because half the time you go to these meetings, people are arguing over procedure. I had a council where I walked in, and the first thing I said was, I'm reading all about these standing rules. Where are they? Oh, they're around. I'm like, well, where are they around? And the answer was, they were in people's heads, because no one from outside of the system had ever gotten on the board before. So we spent a year writing down all the standing rules and putting them in a document so there were no gray areas, because all we did was argue over what the rules were. It would have been really nice to just say, look, you know what? There's a final decision maker. We call them up. They tell us how to move. We move. We all accept it. The same way in a baseball game, you got to live with the umpire's call, right or wrong. 90% of the time, they're right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, come on up. We got 4 mics up here. If people want to come and fill the seats, and we can anywhere you want to sit.
Good evening. My name is Nora Sanchez, and I am a former member of the Elysian Eco Park Neighborhood Council. And I filed a grievance on 2009 because my community, we have a lot of Hispanic people, Spanish-speaking people, and I filed a grievance, and there was formed a committee in order to solve some of the problems that our community was having on that time. Neighborhood Council wasn't representing all the community at Eco Park. When I asked them, Jose Sigala and the wife, and they have a partner, Francisco Torrero, they run the whole neighborhood council. Three members who run the whole neighborhood council. When I asked them if some information and documentation could be translated into Spanish, they said if Spanish-speaking people was interested in having something to say in the neighborhood council, they should show up at the meetings. So, but when it comes to the voting for elections, they get all the lists that they can have, the names. They go on all the schools in the area. They go to the business. They try to get all the votes from Spanish-speaking people because we're majority at Eco Park still. But when it comes to the business in the neighborhood council, they said we have nothing to say there. Because first of all, he told me, you don't even understand what we're talking about because you don't speak English. And the same for your people. So I think that's really shame for the neighborhood council because, as I mentioned, they approached to my husband and myself, and they say that they want our help in getting people for voting. And they're still there. Right now, Jose Sigala is running for two different positions in our community. We want, this grievance was filed on 2009. This is 2012, and we still don't have any information, any documentation, no signs posted in Spanish. We go to the meetings, and there are only 3 people. They don't even have quorum the most of the time. And I feel like we're just wasting our time trying to get involved when the barrier that we find is that they just don't want to work with us. And we want this certification for that neighborhood council. They use the funds, the money, and everything that they can get their hands on for their own purposes to fulfill their own personal agenda, he and the wife. And what I call accessory after the fact, Francisco Torrero, who's the treasurer. And I just stopped going to the meetings because they used to change the place. The meeting was supposed to be either in the library. When we show up to the meetings, oh, you know what? They just changed it to the cathedral, to the church, because they didn't schedule. They didn't contact the person in charge of the library, so we're going to have to walk to the church and stuff like that. I said, that's to me is like shady, very shady. This is a neighborhood council who's handling money from the people. public money, and it shouldn't be wrong for the husband, the wife, and the friend of the family. And they get the hands of people, and they say, you know what, we can give you this, we can work with you. Like El Centro del Pueblo, they're always giving money for this and for that. And when people approaches to them and say, you know what, there is a good project in the community, they can come and work with the community. They say, oh, no, we already grant that money to this and that entity. So, and guess what? They're friends of them, personal friends. You can see them in their houses and dinner, having the tea and stuff like that. And I mean, I just not making up stuff. I saw it, and that's why I decided not to waste my time anymore in the neighborhood council. I served for about 4 years. I represented district number 2, and I was very happy to do it at that time. It wasn't the perfect time. I mean, people that was before wasn't serving the purposes that they were supposed to do here, but no one's perfect. At least was something decent than the one that we have at the moment. I don't know, until now, we went to Dawn. They're friends of them too. We went to Bong. I mean, every month we used to go gather some people and go to different meetings in order to be heard. We wanted to have any answers to, I mean, our claims, and we got tired. One day was here, the other day was there. No Bong, no Dawn. We made complaints, written complaints. We never got official answers until now. Until I'm not even involved in that anymore.
Until now? What did you get now?
Nothing. I'm just not participating anymore.
So you've not received anything, even at...
Never. They never send me anything. I'm sorry. To Bong, to Dawn, we used to go, I mean, like few people, like 5, 6 people, we used to go to the meetings and speak up on what was happening on that time in the neighborhood council. They used to throw the ball from one to another, and you said, you know what, this is not the right place, this is not the right time, you should come back next month maybe. And with Dawn was different. We have documentation. I don't have any documentation because I just got rid of everything. But we have people in our community who's keeping up with all this stuff, and they have documentation that we can submit. I have only this one, the grievance that I filed, the copy of the agenda that when I filed that grievance, and a grievance committee was formed. I'm actually, my neighbor is one of these persons. This is a letter. This is the agenda. I mean, when this grievance was filed, was discussed in this night. And until now, everything is in English. Everything is in English. And sometimes they don't even post the stuff that they're supposed to. But when this meeting is going to be held, they're supposed to post 3 days before, or I don't know how many days before, and still in English. And I keep inviting people, like in school. I used to work with the elementary school, the local elementary school. I used to work with tenants' rights. I used to be very involved with the community, and that's why I got a lot of people for them. They told me one day, you know what, we can help these parents of the low-end school, we can help these tenants that are being evicted in Echo Park. Just let us have the list of the people that you're working with. So because I don't work like that, I'm community roots. I'm not getting any profit for anything. I'm not running for anything. I'm just a person who works 5 days a week, decent job. I'm not seeking anything from anyone. The money that I get, I work hard for it. So my husband and I, we passed them the list. What happened? They copied the list, they gave it to whoever they felt like give the list, and when it came to voting, they were friends of everybody. They couldn't speak. Jose Zigala speaks Spanish. He used to be at Maywood working there. They got rid of him. He was just getting a paycheck, and he wasn't doing anything at Maywood. So he came to Echo Park. No good luck for Echo Park. So they got the list, they start contacting our people, and they, you know what, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. We're gonna get rid of that principal, we're gonna help you with the tenants' right, they didn't do anything, not that I know. They just blah, blah, blah words. Yeah, they kind of say that they're doing things, but they're just fulfilling their personal agenda, you know. We can set aside these funds for this and that. And yeah, this money is gonna be for this and for that. And people, they used to, in the meetings, they used to bring their own people asking for money. This is no ethics at all. No ethics at all. Because at least if I'm gonna bring someone, I'm just gonna talk to her on the phone time ahead. I'm not gonna be whispering at her on the ear and saying, you know what, you're supposed to do this and that in a public meeting. So that's what's happening. We would like to have an investigation. And for sure, this certification, that would be very nice. Just, I can say whatever I can feel like saying right now, but it would be nice if someone takes the time just to review the books, review the notes, the documentation, just see what kind of familiarity is in between the members of the neighborhood council. And they really pay favors to everybody else but the community.
Let me ask someone from Dunn to come up and answer a couple of questions. Could you give me an idea of what the process is for the grievance and what is the requirements for translation at meetings? No one's from Dunn? Nobody?
Councilmember, I'm with the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, not from Dunn, but in our meetings, all of our agendas have something for people to contact, a point of contact, if you need translation services.
Okay. All right, well, we'll research that in the sense of those two questions, and so as we go through our meetings, we can...
They cut the funds for that.
Okay.
They cut the funds. They used to bring a lady, and they said that at the last, they said, no, we can't afford it anymore.
Okay.
If your people wants to come, they should learn English.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, you.
Mark Lewis, the first gentleman that spoke. I'm the one individual that has the unique position of both serving 4 years on a neighbor council, and I spent 7.5 years working for the Department of Neighbor Empowerment, which I'm sure you're aware of. I'm no longer there. As a project coordinator, senior project coordinator, and director of field operations. And a lot of what the gentleman said is true from the outsider's perspective, but having been on the inside and being on a board, there's some things that I'll be brief. The department is poorly managed. There's a lack of respect for neighbor councils and the board members coming from the very top. There's a lack of understanding of neighbor councils and of how the city operates. I also worked previously in the city. I worked actually as a civilian for LAPD. So the city has a certain structure that, including the general manager on down, that most individuals have no idea how that operates. And then they don't know how neighbor councils operate from the neighbor council perspective. So they're in a no man's land, so to speak. There's abusive staff and there's low morale on staff. One of the biggest problems outside of what's taking place in the department, there's no neighbor council culture. People come from unions, homeowners associations, but a neighbor council culture is never developed. So individuals fight for, whether it be union or homeowners associations, they battle for those things in which they bring their perspective rather than looking at the entire community as a neighbor council as part of the culture. And final point, there's a lack of cooperation between the department and BONC, or the Board of Neighbor Commissioners. And I have submitted some information that will give you some insight as to why I say the department is poorly run.
Thank you.
Okay. I live in the area of Echo Park, and it seems the greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council is going to be discussed quite a bit this evening. Echo Park is a very particular kind of neighborhood. And when these neighborhood councils were created, they were not created in a vacuum. Many communities had very powerful organizations already working for the various problems and issues which were of concern to those neighborhoods. And Echo Park has always been characterized by being a highly organized community on many levels. And there are still to this day those organizations, the Echo Park Historical Society, the Echo Park Animal Alliance, the Echo Park Security Association, the Improvement Association, Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park. Depending upon the interest, there was some reflection in an organization. So when the neighborhood councils came, our own particular neighborhood council has gone through a very interesting evolution. The individuals who formed it basically had the community in mind, and they were truly reflective of what was needed in that community, and now we had money to do some of the things. And I must say, in retrospect, quite a bit was accomplished. For example, the Echo Park, no one had ever thought to make it a cultural monument. I'm talking about the actual lake and the park and the surrounding area. The Echo Park Historical Society, with one of the districts of the neighborhood council, was able to do that. They had the money to get the expert and so on. What we have today, from my perspective, is a totally non-functioning, irrelevant neighborhood council. And I'm very resentful of my tax dollar and other tax dollars going to support it. I'll just deal with outreach. It is a catastrophe. Regular meetings are very often characterized as special meetings, so that under the Brown Act, you only need 24 hours rather than the 72. In all the time they have been there, the only people who attend are the nemesis. There are the nemesis. We have Ida Talala and Cindy Ortiz, our two neighborhood council members who have literally photographed and videoed every meeting, and they can give you the history of why, and I'm sure Ida will have a great deal to say on this issue, of why we say what we do and why we have come today out of sheer frustration. And it was interesting, was mentioned how the meetings get moved around. You don't usually know where the meetings will be. Now they are in a site, in a bank building, which is substandard from my perspective. See, there was one other point. Decertification. Well, she'll talk about the fact that we feel the only perspective is decertification, and to start fresh with another group, truly oriented towards the needs of the community. Because some of the members on this neighborhood council have attacked violently, without evidence, some of the other organizations that are still there, still functioning, and still providing the services that our community needs. So I would like Ida to go, because she has much more to say on this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Cindy Ortiz, who has videotaped over 3 years of literally every meeting of this neighborhood council, cannot be here. She's ill and has asked me to submit this to you, which I will bring up at the end.
And tell me again the neighborhood council.
Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council. It will be shortly celebrating its 10th anniversary. And the current president has served in a position for that position for 6 years. And we, at this time, feel this is not a celebration, that draws the whole community together. This is basically to further his own political ambitions. And I think it is important for Dunn to take a look at the situation, and for City Council as well, because the two functions are totally different. And when city monies are used and we do not know what the real purpose is, I think then you have a problem. However, we cannot complain anywhere. I have gone to Bonk, I've gone to the Review Commission in 2007, I've gone to Bonk, I've gone to Dunn many times over, I've gone to the City Attorney's Office, I've gone to Wendy Gruhl's office, City Controller's office. I have come before you when you were chair of the Budget Committee. In fact, I have a document here. I have spoken during the public comments at City Hall, all to no avail. I have filed grievances only to have them thrown out because Dunn asked those that I had aggrieved against whether the situation had been rectified. The husband and wife team said yes. And Dunn essentially said, fine. Never once telling me that my grievance was dealt with. I found out in front of a Bonk meeting. And of course I shouted, liar. And of course I was chastised. I did that again. And I was chastised, and security guard came to evict me. How many hours do I have to spend of my life trying to win something for my community? What does it take to be heard? How dare Dunn say it only speaks to elected members? I was elected. My vote was taken from me in the most bizarre manner. But it was approved. For 3/4 of my term, in which the city paid for an election, I could not vote. The husband and wife team determined that I had not signed my code of conduct, which they admitted they had lost. In the meantime, I was told I was full of SHIT. I was also told that I was old and ugly and bitter. Of what relevance does any of that have?
You were told by whom?
By the chief information officer, who happens to be the wife of the neighborhood council president.
So one of the members of the board.
Oh, members of the board never said a word, never stood up.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out who said this. Is this a person that's related to a board member, or a board member, or just a...
Both are board members.
Okay, so a board member said those things to you?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I complained to the city attorney's office, the ethics commission, and it was, forget it. Get a life. Move on. This is unacceptable. You y'all signed an agreement, city council, for a space and paid $4,500 or $5,000. This is what it looks like. You come in to the space with the city and you have 2 trash cans. At one point we were saying a pledge with the flag standing over a trash can. You've got 11 pages here, take a look. At one point, it was leaking. We walked through the leak.
And that is what now? What does that represent?
The neighborhood council office.
Office, okay.
I feel so sorry for my community that does not speak English. In my earlier life, I was an English as a second language teacher, and I know what a struggle it is to try and communicate in another language. I only speak one language, and that is English. And I know how hard it is. Yet, 2009 in December, the grievance committee said, put your agenda in Spanish, put your minutes in Spanish, and have a translator there. The neighborhood council spends 25% of its monies on outreach. What outreach is it doing? Again, you talk of, the city council signing the rental agreement. For what? That space isn't adequately used. It isn't adequately renovated, yet there are various pieces of paper that indicate that this neighborhood council received $30,000 from the Bank of America for renovations in an article written by the Chief Information Officer. In a press release by the Chief Information Officer. We are thankful that, Bank of America has a long-standing commitment to the community of Echo Park and invested over $30,000 into the new office. We have tried to find out how this money was used. Nobody knows. Nobody. What else do we have to show? Here is an agenda item, the minutes, of monies that they have given away. They've signed off a 5-year contract. Neighborhood councils are not allowed to sign 5-year contracts. They have. What else do we have to show you? You have 3+ years of tape. You have testimony. You have photographs. And I might be old, but I'm not insane or senile. I'm committed to community. I clean up the community. I've had grants for various improvements, and they have made a difference in select corners. You have to begin somewhere. We've met our obligations of a match without a penny from the neighborhood council. That grant was written on a volunteer basis. The community members were brought together, and we made sure. You don't need office space to work in communities. Echo Park Improvement Association has functioned for 30 years. We don't need, 2 seniors don't need to be insulted verbally while they are executing their activities on a volunteer basis at 2 different sites. I was one of the seniors. Nothing could deter the board president from stopping his shenanigans. I was working with about 28 youth. Stop the bullying. Stop the bad manners. Above all, decertify this neighborhood council before it starts its fake 10 years of service to community. Because if we don't do something, this is going to be the Bell City, the poster child of neighborhood councils. And I am so tired of trying to get the city attorney's office to give me some guidance. Tell me I'm going wrong. They don't. They only speak through the liaison, who happens to be the chief information officer. As a stakeholder, I have no forum. This neighborhood council, the Greater Echo Park Aleutian Neighborhood Council, deserves to be investigated and decertified. In June, we took this to Bonk, and Bonk said, give them a chance. This Echo Park is one of our earliest suburbs. It has such historical significance. We need better. And I'd like to believe that this city can decertify a neighborhood council. It has done so. And give us a break for at least 4 years, and then help us, perhaps, to reconvene and move forward. But at the present time, all that is happening is that city funds are used for purposes that are not constructive and are questionable, where there's ethics issues, conflict of interest. Decertify. That is an option that Dunn has never wanted to exercise, nor has it been helpful. And in fact, Dunn has done this community a disservice. And we want it to end. And I feel so sorry for you, Council Member Parks, because you have inherited a can of worms. It's difficult because the rot has taken place over time and multiplied. And now you're asked to clean it up. I will work for my community in any way possible to enhance it, and I absolutely believe in some of the programs that the city has, the anti-graffiti programs, the LA Conservation Corps, Fire Department, the libraries. They're wonderful, all of those. Put that money where it is best used and where the community can benefit. We now have CERT training where the first word, all the board members get a first aid kit, a vest, and one of those hard hats, and their first instructions are, take care of your own in your own house before you go out. Now, if you were in the police academy, you'd tell your police academy student, if that's your attitude, you're in the wrong place. Our police and our firemen just go out, no matter what. And those are the kind of people we in the community want to support. We depend on them. We know they provide a service without considering their own. And money spent there would be absolutely applauded. Thank you for your time,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you. I don't know who came up first.
Hi, I'm Scott Crawford. I'm a founding member of the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council. I helped write the bylaws. I was appointed because I represented Barnsdall Park. At that time, Greater Griffith Park functioned beautifully. I'm currently serving on the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. I'm in my second term there. And the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council is doing amazing things.
When you shifted, did you move?
Say it again?
When you moved from different neighborhood councils?
No, I was on the Barnsdall, I was president of Friends of Hollyhock House,
Okay.
and I also helped establish the Barnsdall Art Park Foundation.
Okay.
So we needed a voice in the neighborhood council, and I went, I'll go.
Okay. I see.
So currently I'm serving in Silver Lake. Last night at our general board meeting, we had over 150 stakeholders observing. Mr. Kim came and talked to us. And the reason I'm here is that I would like to urge you not to do a 6 or 12% drop of the neighborhood council's budget. We do wonderful things with that money, and it would be really hurting us to have to pay, a certain amount has to go to expenses such as note keeping, telephone, stuff like that. If we have a drop in the budget, it would be a significant loss to us because we'd have to go to those things rather than serving the community. The other thing I'm urging you
Let me
to
ask one
do,
thing on your budget. How much do you spend on your budget on administrative overhead?
Rusty?
I'm secretary of the neighborhood council, and so like, our monthly expenses are fixed expenses, renting the school space, someone to take the minutes and that sort of thing, run about $500. That might be a little on the high side.
$500 a month?
Yes, sir.
We don't have an office. We're really bare bones, but it's still, it costs money. So the 6 or 12% drop in our budget would really hurt us. The other thing that I'm urging you to do is to please fund the $650,000 for the elections. The end.
All right. Anything else?
The end.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. You next? One of you.
Go ahead, David.
Hello, board members. Hello, Mr. Parks and the public. My name is Patricia Mendoza, and I'm here for the Greater Echo Park Alicia Neighborhood Council. I've been living in my community for 49 years on Temple and Beaudry. So my zip code is 90012, and if I walk around the corner on Temple Street, it's 90026. I was not aware I can also be a member in the Neighborhood Council of Downtown, and also in the Greater Echo Park Alicia Neighborhood Council. The reason I'm here, because prior to 2004 or after, I was invited by my friend Margarita to attend the Neighborhood Council, and I asked her, what is it about? She said it would be good for you to make a difference and get involved. I really did believe. I thought, wow, there's funds. How does this work? I can cut these trees, paint this wall, make a difference, and educate the parents and the kids. I sat there as a stakeholder in the public for 2 years, and I took my son with me, never missed a day, and I saw how people fought. They cussed each other, really, really bad. It was just overwhelming. After 2 years, I decided to get involved, and I was voted to represent my community, District 5. I chose to get involved in all the committees, even the budget. When I came back from Mexico from burying my mother, I was chosen to be the president of the Children's Committee. I had about 30 to 50 parents and kids, and I was able to buy maybe punch, water, bread, pizza, but I was forced to buy it at a certain business. I was not allowed to buy it at a regular pizza. The reason I'm here, Mr. Parks, because I know that I live in the world that I'm not going to change. There's good people, there's bad people, there's good communities, there's bad, and it's a big, big, big thing. But the reason I'm here is because I believe I believe in justice, and I believe those that sit in power has to hear what I lived in the neighborhood council. I requested for funds for District 5. I asked how much money was in the budget. They said they were not allowed to tell me. At the end, they told me it was $5,000, so I figure I'll ask for the $5,000. It's the first time. Maybe they're going to give me half, or maybe $1,000. They never gave me anything. The next year, I requested for more funds. As of today, they never did give me anything.
And what specifically were you going to use the funds for?
I wanted to do this art project with the students in my community, and I named it Downtown View Art View. And I went through the whole Michaels. I went on the bus. I got the prices. At the end of the day of the committee, all board members said that my community did not deserve $1 a penny because they destroyed things. And that first we have to educate ourselves, and we should get a broom so we can sweep. And maybe in the future, I might see $1 for my community. The president, the board members have told me the F word. Some of them, they react with a lot of hate, a lot of racism. What really shocks me, Mr. Parks, is that I worked in the law firm for 30 years. I negotiate. I brought money. I know what it is, the discipline for when an attorney gets a check and he has to deposit it in an account. He's not allowed to touch a penny or $1. He has to bring in the client and make sure those funds are well given and, and used. And what I've seen here, Mr. Parks, it's embezzlement of funds, it's corruption. What I do, I advise them that it's wrong, negligence, wrongdoing of what they're doing. They react with so much hate, they even tell me the F word in front of my son. And I've been filmed with a video camera. When it took me like 30, 40 minutes when I told one of the board members I would appreciate in front of the public not to film me. I was not aware that my son that was a minor was behind me. When I did notice, I told them like 10 times, and they were all laughing at me, president, the vice president, the secretary. So I did tell him, if he doesn't remove that camera, I will get up and move it, which I did do that. That person basically, he's like 6 feet tall, reacted. He hit me in my arm. My vein kind of popped. It was all bruised, and he hit me on my left breast. I filed the police report. I spoke to a detective. He told me the name of that kind of police report. I can't remember the name, and he said that was a big no-no. They're not allowed to videotape any minors in the public, or if it's a son or a daughter of a board member. These people are just, I tell them that to me, they kind of remind me of, I saw the movie of The Rape of Europe, how Hitler killed people, robbed and destroyed people's personal items. It's no different the way the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council is being run. I would like to know, Mr. Parks, who is behind these people? Who are the ones that gives them the power? Because they like to destroy. Now you have those people, the newcomers, they have all this money, they're opening bars, restaurants, that's fine. What I don't understand is that you have the other little people, Hispanic people that been doing this kind of business. Now the business was given to them, and now they want to make that change, and they are there to announce that they are the new owners. They would like to know they can be supported because they want to make a change in this restaurant or something. It takes them 3-5 years. They make their lives impossible, building and safety, regarding the plumbing, the electricity. I've seen it. I'll give you an example. Planning and use, you have all these investors coming in. Not too long ago, I got a case, and I'm like, well, where's this house? It's by Elysian Park. It's all Echo Park going through Elysian Park. This house is very well known. They did a subdivision. So what they did, they never got permission from the supervisor of building and safety right here in Figueroa. They never informed the new buyer. It's a house in the front, a house in the back, $750,000 in the front. What they did between the sellers and the planning and use, they were allowed to put some kind of easement. So that means that the person that bought the house in the front was having problems with the owner in the back. So they came.
So I'm not missing something? Now, how are we going to tie that into neighborhood councils?
Well, they approved all those documents. They approved the subdivision.
They supported them having.
They supported it, correct.
Okay, all right.
But it was never signed and approved by the supervisor, not even from the bank. So I spoke to my real estate attorney friend, and he said, that's a big lawsuit. That's about $100,000. If these people that lost the case, they can turn around and sue the bank and sue the neighborhood council and sue all these people. I have the documents, Mr. Parks. Now, I sat in the budget committee, and every meeting, I never missed a meeting, and I noticed new faces. Never saw them one time the whole year. They were there for 8,000, for 10,000, 12,000. They never came up to me to see if I approve all that. They were informed not to get close to me. These are people, they never show up in the meeting. Everything is already approved to these people, and there's a lot of embezzlement of funds. Mr. Parks, I have documents, and I have proven, I have witnesses, and I will be requesting and demanding for the Greater Echo Park Elation Neighborhood Council to be investigated by the FBI, to be shut down. I myself personally, Mr. Parks, and I'm not trying to be evil, I believe these people should be behind bars, no different from the people from the city of Bell. Over there we're talking about billions. Right here it's less than 52,000, and I didn't even get $1 from my community. These people take this Greater Echo Park and the funds so personal. They think that this is money that's coming out of their pocket and it's hurting them. It's money from the taxpayer, from everybody. It's to make a difference in something positive. Mr. Parks, I would like to share with you in 2007, I'm going to try not to cry. I had my mother in the hospital. In 2007, in 10 months, 3 hospitals, 3 convalescent homes. They poisoned her blood with MRSA. They used her as a guinea pig. 3 major surgeries, 2 were not successful. When she died in a convalescent home in the city of Glendale, nobody wanted to sign the death certificate. I couldn't do an autopsy. And with my son, Mr. Parks, I would take 10 buses a day, taking my son to Figueroa in York, visiting my mom at Cedars-Sinai. Never was late in one of the meetings. I take my job very personal because that's what my mom taught me. When I came back from Mexico, for me to attend this meeting and for them to put me in front of the public and raise my hand and do my under oath under the book of the Bible, I take it serious. These people, the prior board members, should be behind bars. They should be taken to the criminal courthouse. They're so bad. And these people, what really shocks me, Mr. Parks, where's the education? These people go to USC, they go to UCLA. A homeless by my house or gang member has more respect for me. They behave and they know how to say, good morning, Patty. Can I help you? How are you? These people, you can't even say hello. I can't even ask for anything because they start laughing and they start teasing me. I do have documents and proof, Mr. Parks. And I do want to see these people behind bars. I want all of them to be investigated. I want to see these people, their faces in the Spanish newspaper La Opinión and the LA Times. It's just so sad, so sad. My son that's already 17 years old, he keeps telling me, Mom, why do you keep going? These people hate you. They don't like you. All they do is laugh and it hurts me. Since he was little in elementary school, he would sit there, never cry, never complain. There was many times, Mr. Parks, where me and my son didn't even have nothing to eat. And I was praying. There was at least that the neighborhood council would have some coffee and bread. But I was there. I never missed one day. These people should be punished.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Parks and committee members. My name is David Rockello. I'm the president of Rampart Village presently. I also serve on Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council District 5 as a District 5 representative. I suppose I have a unique perspective tonight, especially after discussing Greater Echo Park Elysian so many times with so many different testimonies tonight. I have served, before I was elected vice president of Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council, I served on the grievance committee for 3 grievances. The process worked very well, and the situation was resolved. Later on, when I became vice president, I was grieved upon for the Spanish translation issue. Now, we can't solve all the problems of Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council tonight, but I think this points out very clearly what happens when the neighborhood council system does not have a regional grievance process in operation. Okay? We have our local grievance committee that is created. Okay? And that's usually created by people on the board. Well, in Greater Echo Park Elysian, what had happened was the stakeholders were asked, you know, can you serve? And it was voted in a very democratic manner. I think that's the way to go for the local end, you know, the first step of the grievance process. But people that are grieving or just complaining, they don't have anywhere to go. And this kind of frustration builds up and builds up. You can't even go to the Dunn website and get the proper documents to file a grievance. So I believe what we should do is get those documents out online, PDF format, and so that people can file grievances. Whether they're actually complaints or grievances, they'll have to learn through the whole process. And I would like to ask tonight, please, the Dunn just moved to the 20th floor in the City Hall, and that's great. Finally, they're getting the respect, you know, after 10 years, they have a place in City Hall. That's great. But the office on First Street was such a great place to meet for so many different reasons, and it was so much more accessible. If that can be given back to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment for the purpose of holding grievance meetings throughout the city, and as long as the people that are on these regional grievance committees have nothing to do with the neighborhood council on which they're making a decision, you know, like if I'm being grieved upon, I expect I would recuse myself and walk out, and have somebody else would replace me in that system. But that system has not been set up. In some earlier testimony, they said it was 8 years in coming. This is far too long. The people need a way to vent. They need a way to be heard. And this is a very important part of the whole process. We need that give and take. So I'd like to see where, you know, not only that space could be used for grievances, but we had IEA trainings there, the Independent Election Administrator, which brings me into the elections. I'm somebody that believes in self-affirmation, and I don't think we shouldn't be putting up roadblocks to having people joining in the election. You know, if it's an outside organization that takes over the neighborhood council for 2 years, well, that's the fault of the stakeholders that didn't get their people out. Okay? So I see it as we need more inclusion, and people that want to come in and say that they're a part of this neighborhood council, whichever neighborhood council they choose, they should have that access. I'd like to thank all of you for your time, and you know, I'm just here to learn and serve. I've taken the trainings. A lot of my fellow board members have not taken trainings, and I'd like to see where there are consequences for when board members don't take trainings. If you don't know what the rules of the game are, how are you supposed to play correctly? So I'd like there to be, on that educational level, you know, some responsibilities for these board members to take trainings, to be, you know, very in depth into what's going on with ethics, what conflict of interest is, all these different elements. And finally, the definition of stakeholders, I think that should be up to the neighborhood councils. We have 95 neighborhood councils, and they are 95 different people. You know, if we're going to look at as entities, there are 95 different children of Los Angeles. So they need to be treated differently. Yes, we need metrics to build up to live up to. Of course, dogs should not vote in the neighborhood council. At one time in one neighborhood council, that was allowed. But, now neighborhood councils are a serious matter. And it's time that the people that are a part of the neighborhood council get the correct training, be sensitive to the different individuals, and be responsive to their communities. So thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're next?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Parks.
Say anyone else? Come on up. Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember, thank you. My name is Rusty Millar. I'm currently a member of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council and President and Secretary of the Board, and been co-chair in the past. And my first interaction with you was in early 2004, when several of us met with you and the rest of the City Council at the time, lobbying against that 18% water rate increase that DWP wanted, announced in December. And we went from probably a full City Council yes to a full City Council no within about a 60-day period of time, which was something that two-thirds of this group of us got two-thirds of the neighborhood councils to coalesce around a motion to oppose that. So
we did something right.
we did, yes, you did something right. And I recently just served as a member of the Ratepayers Advocacy Commission, appointed by then Council President Garcetti. Some interesting comments tonight, and certainly your tolerance should be recognized by everyone. Some of the problems that I think neighborhood councils experience have, I've just been jotting down some things. Dunn staff has been reduced so much because we used to have one of their representatives at each one of our monthly board meetings. That's gone out with the wash water. And so if you don't have a member of Dunn at some of these meetings from neighborhood councils that I've been listening to tonight, to maybe do some mediation and say, point of order, then you're going to have problems that just fester and grow, and there's no accountability. And in the same capacity with funding and expenditure operations, because the neighborhood councils are required to file a quarterly report, so that the city controller and the Dunn folks are monitoring what we're doing with the public dollars, which I think is extremely important. And having been a member of a neighborhood council for 8 years, a lot of things get done in your community based on relationships you're able to establish, not only just within your community, but with City Hall staff, or even, having conversations with a council member on a particular, that serves your community. I have Eric Garcetti and Tom LaBonge, and I know both of them fairly well, and I can talk to them, and I interact with their staff on a very regular basis to lobby for one thing or another if necessary, to get more information, also working with our senior lead officers on issues that impact the community, which I think is extremely important. And I just like to say, because I don't know if we're on air or not, but my comments are mine, not a comment from the neighborhood, not a board position in any capacity. All of our agendas indicate contact. If you need a translator, if it's Spanish, I think I'm a little foggy here, but it also may have a contact if you need a translation for Tagalog. So, but we do need a certain time frame ahead of time to be able to line up someone to come and meet those needs. And we have done this in the past. I think that neighborhood council should have a greater input on land use decisions in their community. And as far as the training is concerned, what David was just saying about requiring board members to participate in some training, whether the ethics training and also certainly the Brown Act training. I think that's extremely important, so you understand the rules on how you operate, and so you can get things done without trying to choke each other at the end of the night. Elections, I think that certainly I would prefer that we went back to the way our neighborhood council used to do it, was every year, and we had staggered terms for the board members. And in the most recent election the city put on, they designated a spot which was hardly an area for inclusivity of the community that Silver Lake represents, because the region in our neighborhood council that I represent straddles Sunset, and I have people who live in homes that are in the 7-figure price range, and people have a difficult time paying $500 a month in rent. So I have a whole lot of folks that I interact with on all sides of the spectrum. But I think that the elections ought to go back to letting the neighborhood council run their elections with an independent administrator, because we could do it, and we did it a whole lot cheaper than what the city did 2 years ago. Sorry?
What did you refer to them as what type of administrator?
Independent IEAs, which were trained, and they were the sort of the monitor of the whole thing, but it was the community put it on. And we had polling places too, so that we could capture as much of the community as possible to make it walking distance to folks, to encourage.
How did you notify the community of the location in the election?
There was mail outs at that time. Dunn was still doing mailers on things. Now each person running for office had their own method, probably doing it. Me, and I mean, I know that there's over 1,800 addresses in my particular region, because I've knocked on every single door 3 times at least, and campaigned for other folks in other years. So, I mean, I'm sort of the old school sort. I want to knock on your door, and I want to shake your hand, and I want to talk to you, because then, Mr. Parks, if that was me coming to your door, you're going to put a face with a name, and there's a likelihood that you'll go out and vote. Some people prefer to do email or whatever, but you get a real discrepancy in people that do more personal outreach as far as how many people vote versus those that don't. And I really believe that there ought to be a standard set of bylaws for each neighborhood council citywide to operate on. It's how they elect their officers is up to themselves. Some may have a president, some may have co-chairs, and however they want to do that. But the board elects the officers. And I think, and certainly just from experience, and I'm sure there's other neighborhood councils here that maybe you've heard from, the payment process when an invoice is submitted into Dunn for payment is really slow. It's always been bad, and it hasn't got any better. And in many cases with neighborhood councils, some people get on with an expectation that they're going to be able to do something, but in a way sometimes they probably run into a bureaucracy within the neighborhood council to get something done, or the ability to work within the community to champion what the lady was talking about for her art project in the community. If you don't have a network of folks that are helping you with something, it becomes really difficult and frustrating. And so it may just go by the wayside. If there's a board member that's really interested in youth issues, they'll get really cranked up and go forward. But if they leave the board and no one else picks it up, well then, that sort of falls way on the side. So anyways, just some comments. And I certainly appreciate, all the work that you guys do and sitting here listening to all of us tonight.
Yes. Thank you so much. And good evening, gentlemen. I am Margarita Fernandez, and I live in Echo Park, so you can imagine what I am about to say. And that is to say that the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council, under its present leadership, its executive, is practicing the art of deception and misuse of public funds. Thus, it must be decertified. Also, in reference to whom must we speak to, I've been writing to Councilman CD1, Councilman CD13, letting them know what has been happening in reference to this neighborhood council, have been before Bonk, only to have Mr. B1 Kim, call us disgruntled stakeholders, which is not the case. I've been before Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. They listened, and they say, yes, let us know more, and more. And so I have been doing that. But my main emphasis is in reference to deception. I've been stating for the last couple of months that we have meetings. For example, here's agendas for 3 committees on certain days, and yet they've never taken place. They've been posted, but they have never taken place. It's with the intention of not having them because there is no quorum, which means none of the board members show up. So what are they doing? They're not doing anything, obviously. So not only that, but also the person who happens to be the treasurer. There's been no budget and finance meeting in so long that we do not even know what's happening nowadays, other than the president, who is the one who's calling the shots there, who's running everything, seems all of a sudden on the 28th of February left the meeting on tiptoes, went out and came back with a budget report of the budget and finance for January and December. Yet, stakeholders were not privy to this. We don't know what's happening, but yet they're submitting this. And this is what I've been saying all along to both CD1 and CD13. They are choosing to listen to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, who in turn chooses to listen to those executives of the Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council, believing that they are being told the truth, which in fact they are not. They are being deceitful, and telling them what they want to hear, what is nice on paper. Everything here looks nice on paper, but the reality is it hasn't taken place. It is not true. So, what I'm saying is this neighborhood council, the way it is being run, with people not knowing how funds are being allocated, because what they do is funds are allocated for a project, but then the project doesn't materialize. So what happens to those funds? Where do they go? Where are they? Don't know. Case in point, as recent as last year, I believe, it was May 28th or 24th, thereabouts, a mentioned was 15,000. There's an addition of 15,000. And so we're going to see what we can do with it, who will be holding it for us, whether it be CD1 or CD13. Don't know. Okay, fine. Following, there's a budget meeting. Everybody goes, and it is asked, what happened to those 15,000? And of course, nobody knows because there is no money. So we're saying, what happened to that 15,000? Was it so quickly dispersed? Don't know. So again, they will not share any information with us. This is the executives. Now, there's another 50,000 that was written in reference to the issue again that they had received, but we don't know. It's just the same thing that happens time and time again. They don't want stakeholders to be informed to know. Case in point, here's another one, which I will submit everything here because this is my only article that I have or issue here of the Board of Governors agenda, the recent one of the 28th of February. I will submit it. We have here something that was according to this items for November meeting. And this was given to us in February. Who recalls way back in November, and they're allocating funds for a period of 5 years? That is unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. If any, it should only be 1, not 5 or more. But then again, this is how this Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council functions under this present administration. Another thing also, in reference to when I was at the 2009 meeting in Canoga Park in the Valley, I went there to talk about the grievance issue. The grievance committee, they did bring it forth, and all of a sudden, after it was held, it's no more. It's dispersed. No one knows anything about it. I understand, and I know for a fact that grievances have been submitted, and yet at a hearing committee here in City Hall, I was there when it was said, Ms. Gracie Liu of the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, that she was informed that it had been taken care of. Well, indeed, that is false, because it hasn't. I haven't heard, and I'm interested in hearing those, because there's more than one, those grievances, and they haven't. So, in essence, why should we continue to have taxpayers' money be expended only at the whims of those who are in power, which is the present president, because he carries the card. It's no longer Mr. Treasurer who happens to be the treasurer. He only holds the title. So therefore, I continue to ask that you definitely start something and look into this, because it's not disgruntled people. We are coming, I and some other colleagues who live in Echo Park are letting you know this is what is happening. Like I said, everything looks beautiful on paper, but the reality is it didn't take place. This is what is being submitted. And then you speak to the president, oh, of course it did, this and this and this, oh, they're unhappy. That is not the truth. You need to look at it and see, why is the treasurer not being the treasurer, but rather the president, who is the one who went out that night to pick up two, and he submitted, and he did not allow us to even see it because time was over, time was out. But here it was. So I ask that the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council be decertified. It's been long overdue. The same things are coming continuously going forward, and it will not change because that is how it has been allowed to run. And I blame the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment for failure to look at this, because I understand the council, CD1 and CD13, they believe what they are being told by another department, and the department chooses to believe those who are doing the failures on a continuous basis. So once again, decertification for the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council, and I will leave this to you, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, my name is Alexia Teran. I'm a board member of the Greater Cypress Park Neighborhood Council. I live in Cypress Park, 3319 Alice Street, LA 90065. Thank you for your time, sir. And I've been involved in the neighborhood council since before people thought about it or were kind of starting the movement. At first, I thought it was just a few people, but then I realized that, and I read about it all over the city. So there must have been a reason for many people all over the city wanting to assist the elected officials, because there's a lot of people out there, you can't do it all, and neither can we, as you see. And what I saw at the time, and I've mentioned it to Bonk and Dunn more than once, that first of all, nobody knew what we were doing actually. Maybe some people did, but many of us didn't. And some of us were very like Pollyanna. We just want to do good for the community and blah, whatever. But many people have their own agendas, and people come from everywhere. And it's difficult because since Dunn was the same, they didn't know what they were doing. It's true. And so it took time for something to work. And yes, a while back, there were more of them, and they would come, at least they came every time to our neighborhood council meeting. So it was easier for them to say, okay, this is wrong or whatever. But then after a while, yes, we all know it decreased, so it's much harder now for them to do anything in helping us. That's one thing that I've seen, and I did mention it to Bonk. And also what I mentioned to Bonk more than once is that you've got to tell us that we have to take some sort of training, because some people were professionals and maybe knew what they were doing, but many of us didn't. So, but they would say, no, we can't tell you. You have to come over. I've been to many workshops and trainings, and I do it now because sometimes I might forget something, or the laws might change, or the rules might change, and I want to know as much as possible. And it isn't just my neighborhood council, because I've been to a few others. And just like you heard from this past one, I don't know why. I can understand some of them don't have the time, okay, but not everyone. And I'm not saying they have to go to every single workshop, but once in a while, don't you want to know something about what you're doing here? That's what I think, but they don't seem to. They go and sit there, and I don't know what they think they're doing. They're little dictators. People come and ask for the money, whatever, and yeah, they just give it. You can't do that. We've been told lately, after 10 years from Dunn, that we have to have a form asking whomever comes and makes the request, what good will it do to the community? I mean, that's such a simple, basic idea. That's what the funds are for. We're supposed to bring them information about all the services from the city and inform them, and then have them come and participate in the process. Those are the two basic things we're supposed to be doing. But some people still don't get that. And they do, yeah, some of the things they do what they want. And even though some of the board members, like myself, will say, you know what, really you shouldn't, whatever. They don't listen. They don't listen. One or two have been put on exhaustive methods because Don is trying to assist, and I'm glad, because if they don't come and force some of the members to do workshops right there in front of them, they're not going to go. So at least they have half a second or something of information up here, but you got to do more than that. And a long time ago, when they were first forming, I went to Lincoln Heights, because we all know cultures are different, we all know communities are different, and everybody has a different level of education. And one question that came, I wasn't the only one who asked that, why does everyone have to follow Robert's rules? Because some people have no idea what Robert's rules are about. It's kind of difficult. And they said, well, you know what, you can do your own. Well, it shouldn't really just be do your own, but I think that it should be a little simpler. We could modify Robert's rules and have rules, of course, but sometimes people don't understand it. Last night, I went to the ASNC, the Royal Second Neighborhood Council, because they were the first ones that started the movement, and they were pretty good, but now it's people, you know. Some people fight for whatever. They fight because of this microphone. They don't like the color. They don't like what it looks. I mean, it's so dumb, but Don came and said, you got to have this training, and there I was, you know, listening and watching, and that was very good. I'm so glad. And I'm sorry that it has to happen, but if this is the only way, then it must be. And it isn't like everybody is. I never realized that, you know, this neighborhood council was so bad. I did read in the newspaper a while back that, you know, some of them were decertified. And it shouldn't be that way, because it's not a lot of money we have. It isn't. It's a small quantity, but we have to know what we're doing. We have to be careful with that money, no matter where it comes from. Yes, we'll put it in, but no matter where it comes from, it's supposed to be for the neighborhood, to do something positive in the neighborhood. And then the other thing about the language. I'm bilingual. I'm Mexican American. I speak Spanish. And even if I were whatever the language is, I believe that we should provide for whomever comes so they can understand, you know, what this is about. If we don't do that, they don't come. And you can go to almost any neighborhood council, and very few times do they have stakeholders there. So then they do what they want. You know, it's easier for them to just do what they want because there's nobody there. Outreach has got to be done continuously. And we need assistance. This is another thing that I mentioned to Bank and Dunn. We need your assistance. You can do it. Put big posters, you know, simplify them, and mention to them what we are doing for them. We're doing it for everyone. We need them to come and help us do the work. And so it's difficult. And then there are times when my community, for example, it's a small community, but there are others like mine. Some people have so many other problems in their home. They have lack of skills, different skills, and maybe not even legal. So they can't worry about a neighborhood council. They have no idea what it is. So how do we get them to come in? When we started this neighborhood council, I mentioned, because I lived in my neighborhood for 45 years, so I kind of know my community pretty well and my culture. I suggested to the board that we provide light refreshments and childcare and translation. Oh my goodness, it took me forever to get them to learn the reasons why. I said, believe you me, I know what they need, but it shouldn't come from me. It should come from them. When we ask them to come in and they mention whatever it is, they feel so much better. We're going to help them. And they came and gave us information. So we did it for a few times. Finally, after a long battle, they agreed. But then, because many times they don't come. They only come for something huge. Somebody got killed. We have gangs, yes, of course. And they come. But that's the only time they'll show up. And they want us to take care of everything for them. That's not possible. So we need more education for everyone. This is the other thing that has nothing to do with this, but if some people in the government, I won't mention who, wouldn't take away education, it will be so much better. Why do they always, it isn't just here, and it has happened throughout time. That's the way to control the masses, when they take away education, and I'm sorry, gentlemen, for both genders. It should be equal. We're both here in this world. You are needed for one thing, and I'm needed for something else. I'm sorry, but thank you. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, council's officials. I'm a newly elected officer in the GPANG, and this is my writing because I'm just an amateur comparing to somebody, and this is what I observed. I'm just learning in the community and get involved. And what I observed for attending the meeting in the neighborhood council is a great experience being a leader. With regards to the board members, especially in the Rampart Neighborhood Council, which is David Rockello is in charge as a president, I observed that they ignore or neglect or doesn't like to take the board training program. There's no consequence on this, especially the self-appointed leader. They form a coalition and serial meeting against the leader who were being elected and having a good votes on the election and legally run in the election. Most of the board members who did not took up the training and lack of understanding and adequate skills, they only rely on their experience being old board members. They are creating debate society whenever they have a regular meeting and competition, which is irrelevant to the topic and messing up the meeting. They want to step down the one who is working very hard and developing ethnic groups and relevant in his work. They want to form only one nationality sometimes, like Latinos. They were against to the Koreans. They were against to the Filipinos. How come we cannot accomplish something, you know? And this is what I wrote again. Then. So what will be the outcome if we cannot create a good governance and leadership in the community? If you will not implement a little restriction or measures and behavior of the stakeholders and rudeness against to each other. So the best is to educate, orient the people, especially to give an example as a leader and have a better understanding and unification in the community. We cannot rely on the stakeholders and or board. If they are telling the truth or not, you must sometimes visit or something, they must send a proof, so they will not complain or go to the grievance committee and file a complaint. And this is the best thing that you can do is to sometimes to visit and observe the way they run the meeting. And also one thing I want to remind and announce this one, some of the Filipino organization is using the title of their organization as neighborhood council, but they are not associated in the neighborhood council. They cheated the newspaper and publishing and everything, and we look like a phony whenever we attend their organization. And also the Consul General of the Philippines already approached them that they must not use the title as a neighborhood council. And they're putting us down. I cannot do anything because I'm just newly elected and I'm just learning. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much. Have you spoken already?
I have, Mr. Parks, but I only have...
Okay, just one thing. Is anybody here that has not spoken for, one time? Or do you wish to speak? Yes, come on.
Yeah, hi, I'm Robert Guevara from the Eagle Rock. I'm the Neighborhood Council, the Secretary and Education Director. And I was listening to, well, everybody here, and I just have a few things I wanted to touch upon. The ethics training, I believe it's required already by the state law, but as some people have mentioned, there's no consequences for failure to comply. And I think that's, one thing that needs to be taken care of. As to requiring other training, I'm still not certain that that's, that you want to impose that, although you may want to offer it. The elections, I think that those should be done, but with an independent election administrator. I'm in agreement with that. Also participate in the LANC meetings, and a lot of the people there are also in favor of that. One of the things that I wanted to mention, well, in my particular neighborhood council, I think what we're failing to get is a lot of interaction with our council members. I find, and I mentioned this at our meeting that we find more information, from my point of view, from the LA Times, the LA Weekly, Ron K. LA, City Watch, than we do with any heads up from our council member. And this has been going on for like 2 years. So I think he's more interactive with the homeowners association or with the residents association, which is TERRA. But, you know, this is the way the condition is. This is my observation. I think on the bylaws, we do have already in place a template that's been worked on. Ours was worked on last year, and we've got that so that we have uniformity so that you can look in the bylaws for any neighborhood council to find where the membership is and so on, so that there's an orderly fashion. They're still taking some time to approve those. But I think that's something that was developed, again, by the Neighborhood Council Task Force that somehow got taken over by Bonk. But it was the same product, so it was very useful. I think one of the things that I've noticed from the Neighborhood Council is that we have a lot of, there's a lot of varying views. There's 95 neighborhood councils right now. You heard some problems from just one particular neighborhood council principally, but I think for the most part, a lot are operating very well, and some are operating, you know, in a mediocre level, but those can always be improved. But I think that the view from the council is not the kind of respect that we should be getting. I think that a lot of the functions that people see, even members of the neighborhood council, are that we're supposed to be filling the gap for deficiencies from the city part. If you notice, I think it was October that Studio City spent $10,000 of their own money, of their budget money, and that's $40,500 for this fiscal year. They spent $10,000 to fix potholes, the ones for their community. It's a good service, but I don't think you should be looking to us to use our money, which is not replenishable, compared to the city council, which has assorted sources of funds to apply, different kinds of discretionary funds, the street furniture account, and assorted avenues of money sources. We don't. We have the fixed amount, and if we spend it, it's gone. So I think that using our system is not the right system to plug in the gaps. What we should be doing is working with the community to help them find how to generate money, how to apply for grants, how to multiply the what their abilities are to find funding sources, rather than just to suck money from our budget, which I find has happened a lot. And I think that we've gotten to have a mentality among many neighborhood councils, and I'm speaking mostly from my own, that we are basically in business to give money to who we see ask for it. And I don't think that that's really our principal purpose. From my understanding of the city charter is that we're supposed to be there to monitor the delivery of city services to the public and to convey the needs and the wishes of our constituents or our stakeholders to the council and the council member and the mayor. I think that works with the budget advocates. I think that's a proper function. But I don't think that even the budget advocates is kind of a detached view from many people in the community. The community, if they don't see why they should be involved in the neighborhood council, then they view it as some elitist or isolationist organization. And I think that's something that each neighborhood council deals with on its own through outreach. One of the things that I saw too is that we've worked on getting the ratepayer advocate. That was from March last year. The vote was to approve that. And the ratepayer advocate, as initially envisioned, was watered down, I recall, from Council President then Garcetti, from one kind of strong position to something less so. It still is a start, and I think that that still represent. We wanted more authority. I think somebody with more authority to remedy a lot of things and to get into things behind the scenes. That's really that's really some advocacy for the ratepayer. That's what the title is. It took a long time to fill the position, and I think that's one of the problems that happens with city council. Another problem that is just built into the system is that our neighborhood council has meetings once a month. With the Brown Act, you have to give form your agenda, give your 72-hour notice minimum before the meeting, and only things that are on the agenda can be dealt with by the neighborhood council. The way the city council operates, we can't do a whole lot of things as far as resolutions, criticisms, or anything, because they come up so fast. We have a lead time, we have a month. If something doesn't get handled in a month, and some things are tabled because we don't have the time in the meeting to get to every item. For example, we had the issue of the police changing the impound approach for non-licensed drivers, and that was not decided, and that's something that has citywide impact, and a few more things. But we have to have let me see here. Okay, but we have a lot of things that we want to have heard, but the function or the way it happens, again with a timetable, they get skipped over. And I noticed that city council, when they want to move things without any interference from citizens groups or any groups, they expedite it and they move it quickly. And I think in 2 years ago on the day of the taxes, April 15th or 16th, you had the special one with the DWP meeting that Deon O'Connell said it was not an emergency, but he was ignored. So when it suits the council to move things fast, it is moved fast. I think Wayne from Encino was the only person there to comment on that at the time in opposition to approving that particular expeditious treatment of that without being on the agenda. I think that we need to work out something where we're notified with a heads up, because if we don't get it on our agenda, it doesn't get handled. And a lot of our ability to respond to what happened in the city government is hampered by that timetable. I don't think that the Brown Act is wrong, but I think that because of that, unless you meet twice a month, which some neighborhood councils do, that you're not able to hit everything that you want to, and you're not able to be involved with citywide government. Our neighborhood council, sometimes I consider it to be a bit provincial, because they're more concerned with things within our geographic boundary rather than overall issues in the welfare of the city and the betterment of the government and the way it approaches things. But then that's because that's my interest, and some people are just really dealing with quality of life in the immediate area. But I do think that there needs to be some changes, and I think that the neighborhood council itself has to bring, to some extent, bring themselves up by their own bootstraps, and I'm not sure how that would be done, because if someone's not with any passion to do it, I don't know what else you can do. But I think there is a certain level of commitment when you consider that the neighborhood council is a voluntary organization, and everything that gets done is not because it's being paid for. And I think there's some personal pride or feeling of accomplishment that compensates people for that, at least for me. And really, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I'll give you a couple more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Thank you. Regarding the Greater Elysian Eco Park Neighborhood Council, sure.
Flip the tape. Just 1 second.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. There's so much that I myself and so many of us would like to say, but I know there's not enough time. What I did wanted to mention, Mr. Parks and all board members, the first person that spoke here, I kind of understood. He talked about the bylaws and the rules, and that's a problem. I think at the end what really happens here is about the money. It's about the power and control, because the bylaws and the rules, it grows so much and there's so much to learn. It's a process of so many years, so you can understand why we can't do this as board members. But I don't think that's a problem. The problem is that you have so many people, and these neighborhood councils are so well educated. They're brokers, they're real estate, they're attorneys. They feel like they want to be better than the other ones, or they think they're judges. But one thing that I do know, they behave and they treated me like some kind of cockroach where, shut up, Miss Mendoza, you know? They step all over me. What I did wanted to say is that these people have no respect for these bylaws and rules. And the president of the neighborhood council where I live, he's an ex-employee of Richard Alarcon. His wife is also very well in politics, was married at one time to one political person, and owns nonprofits, and is still working for one. To me, that's a conflict of interest. Not only that, they have no respect because at the time of the meetings, Mr. Parks and board members, these people are so good with these bylaws and these rules, they know how to twist them, and they'll argue and they'll fight and they'll bang on that table and tell you, be quiet, I know what I'm doing. I'm warning you, I'm threatening you, I'm going to call the police and have you arrested. Now, I am aware that the mayor signed some document a few years ago between 1 and 3 saying that the neighborhood council is open to give to the schools, LA Unified School, and money to the nonprofits. Last week I went to the neighborhood council, I got the copy of the budget. There's about 4, 6, 7 schools. Each of them is getting $500. Nonprofits, every year is growing. LA, the schools and the nonprofits. LA Unified School, it's a nonprofit, it's an organization. What people don't know is that prior they were LA Unified School, they used to run a big real estate office. They still buy properties. They get all these funds from the lottery. Billions and billions and big corporate businessmen that they interview at KCET. And they're still taking a little bit, Mr. Parks, the little bit that we get, the less than $52,000. The thing is that I thought there was hope. I like to educate myself. I want to be wrong. I want someone to come to me and say, you know what, Miss Mendoza, you said something wrong. You did something wrong. You need to apologize. This is what you did. Let me read you the bylaws. Okay, I'll sit down. There's nothing wrong. I love that. But when you're dealing with this group of people that feel so much hate, they don't have the love and the power for their community. I do. I'm not going to change the world. But I know what's wrong and I know what's evil, what's wrong, what's good, what's negligence and wrongdoing. I don't need a college degree to know that, Mr. Parks. Now, they're approving all these people with the license of the liquor. I myself, Mr. Parks, in the night walking with my son, Sunset in Echo Park. You have people on drugs, especially heroin. That thing is coming strong in downtown and Sunset in Echo Park. I was naive about it, but lately I've been seeing a lot of things. I'm going to give you flyers of the flyers at Echo Park and Sunset in these nightclubs, what they provide and how they're all over Sunset in the streets and what kids and parents see. Now, I'm not going to mention any names. A few years ago, there was a city council that was driving on Sunset, hit and run. He actually wanted to leave the scene. He actually hit a young woman, and she was taken to the hospital. He promised he was going to pay all the bills. They had to chase him, and he said, here's my business card. Go look for me at my office. He never wanted to pay nothing. Okay. There's been so much...
We're going to have to wrap it up now.
So much damage, Mr. Parks, with my city council, Mr. Ed Parks. But you know what? I promise you, Mr. Parks, I'm going to give you flyers, documents, and witnesses. Okay. Because you need to know that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me just ask a quick question in general. Some of you have mentioned the Brown Act. Just a couple of words. Is the Brown Act a hindrance or is it a positive as it relates to operating of your neighborhood councils? Just yell out.
I think it's a good state law. We should follow that.
Okay. You had a hand up in the back?
I think that the Brown Act is a saving grace. Otherwise, meetings are a moving piece for those who wish to evade the stakeholders.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on the Brown Act? Yes.
I think it's kind of mixed, but on the whole, it weighs the benefits and burdens. It's a benefit because it keeps people with notice at least, and nothing happens by surprise, and nothing gets pushed through without at least some notice to people, and it also controls your agenda so it doesn't start exploding or showing up on the spot.
Okay. Let me ask another question. What is your perception of redistricting as it relates to your neighborhood council? Yeah, whoever wants to make a comment.
My personal view is that the whole process was, and I'm not alone, obviously, is that it was
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on just a minute. Clerk's going to send me home if I don't do this right. Let's use this portable mic because he can't get the recording without it. I'm sorry.
Okay, what I think is that or redistricting, I think the process was corrupt. I think we were better off with the maps before anybody touched them than what we have now, because what we have...
What community are you from?
Okay, I'm from Eagle Rock, CD14, and I'm not the favorite person of our representative. But anyway, I think that you don't have to be a favored person of anybody to see that the process had a lot of problems with it, and even the people involved in it most directly see the process that is flawed themselves, where it doesn't represent, like you have on the state level, you have citizens who are not part of the system that came to be appointed to do that. Here, because of the connection to the appointers, the appointees have something of a conflict, I think, built in, and that's the major problem that you have with the system.
Anyone else?
I was on the Los Angeles Unified.
Come on over here with the mic. If you don't speak at the mic, he can't get a recording.
I was actually on the LAUSD redistricting committee, and I watched many of the city council redistricting committees, and I actually produced a minority report for our committee that I will send you. And watching the council district, I'll just say I was shocked. And however, spending my time on the LAUSD redistricting committee, I could see how things ended up that way.
For Rampart Village, which had 4 different council districts located within a teeny little neighborhood council, we now have 2. So things are looking up. I'd like to see where city councils are roundish, and they shouldn't have long fingers. You know, I don't like hooks and I don't like barbells as neighborhood councils. I think they should be, as much as possible, round spots that don't have long legs on them. And I think that's what's best for the community, no matter how many parks or projects, long time standing. When communities haven't been together in over 30 years, that's a problem. We need to move things around every once in a while. I liked the beginning of the process, but at the end, I saw it as politics of the past coming into play again. The LAUSD redistricting thing happened way too fast and not enough public access. Although some of our issues got taken care of, now we still have 2 school districts in Rampart Village. It's in a different place now, but still, that's going to, there's no reason. It's such a small neighborhood council, they should go around it, because it is, in the central area of Los Angeles. So, thank you.
Any other comments?
I'm not sure, Mr. Parks, if I'm understanding the question, but...
All I wanted to know is whether you have a perception about the redistricting process from the neighborhood council perspective.
Well, I live on Temple and Beaudry, and my district is District 5, which is the biggest. There's 1 in 5. And for the past 10 years, the historical Filipino town has been running our funds. And I don't understand why City Council Garcetti all over is giving the power to these people, dividing streets and communities, putting a sign and a pole, historical Filipino town, little Armenian town, little so-and this is, what is that? That's they're dividing the community, Mr. Parks.
Do you have a view about the redistricting?
I would like District 5 to be apart from the historical Filipino town. Thank you.
Anyone else? Let me just say thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your comments. We will be having our first regular meeting of the Neighborhoods and Education Neighborhoods Committee in April, the first Tuesday? First Tuesday. It will be, what is it, 1?
Our regular time is 1 p.m.
1 p.m. So that'd be the first Tuesday. One of the things, just from some of the collections of things that people have talked about in our 4 meetings, that seems to be consistent, is that if we're looking at priorities to work at, it appears elections is a big priority. Ethics training is a big priority. Looking at identifying stakeholders is a big priority. Bylaws is a big priority. Updating the roster by done so that we know who's on the mailing roster, updating the webpage. And so those are things that we're going to try in talking with Paul over here and my staff and looking at the first meeting that we're going to try to tackle some of these issues and believing in my judgment that if we really look at the election process, it will drive many of these things from bylaws, stakeholders as part and parcel of it. And so that's what we're going to be looking at in the first meeting. And so as we move forward. So that's our game plan. Lorenzo in my office is the staff on this committee if you need to reach us, 4737008. And so we're looking to work with you and seeing how we could resolve some of these long-standing issues as we move forward. So thank you very much for being here. One thing to just mention to you, if you have concerns about the redistricting, the last meeting will be the 16th, where there will be a committee meeting at 8:30 and then full council at 10. So if you have issues and such that you wish to come in and talk about, that's going to probably be your last effort to do so. Okay? So thank you very much.